Tayyab Mehta epitomizes the fantastic strides Indian art has made in the past decade on the world stage. He was allied with the Mumbai based Progressive Artists Group, the first generation of artists to emerge after the country's independence in 1947. They broke free from the nationalist Bengal school and embraced modernism instead, with its post impressionist colors, cubist forms, and brusque expressionistic styles. A quiet man who lived simply, according to friends and associates, Mehta initially trained as a cinematographer, winning renown for his 1970 black and white film Kudal, which he shot in a Mumbai slaughterhouse. It was his painting, however, with its startling imagery combining Hindu themes and first hand memories of the sectarian violence that consumed the country during partition, that made him a kind of national hero, albeit of a very different sort from his close colleague and fellow Progressive Artist Group founder, the jet setting, Ferrari driving M.F. Hussain. Though India's art lovers have admired Tayyab Mehta's work for decades, his real moment in the sun came in 2002 when his triptych Celebration became the first Indian painting to sell at auction for over 1 crore rupees. In 2005, he secured a place in the history of art market by becoming the first Indian artist to have a work sell for over $1 million. There are a lot of stories about Tayyab Mehta. For example, the painting titled Mahishasura was initially called Mahishasur Mardini, but with M.F. Hussain being victimized by the Hindu right, Tayyab preferred to omit the reference to Durga. His health was fragile and he wanted no distraction from his work.
Now we are going to go to Tayyab Mehta's daughter's place to hear many such stories about the great man's life and his work.
This was done in London in 1959. He moved after JJ School of Art. He went to London for a few years to be able to see. His motive to go abroad was to see all the works that they had studied about. He wanted to see them in the original and actually be able to. So he lived in London for a few years, and this work was done there. So this was the style of his application of color at that time, which is what they had learned, and that's how they had studied art and all that. And the imagery, I think, this is quite obviously a crucifixion, and it probably came from the exposure to the Western world, that kind of reaction to it. He never really carried on with crucifixion and things like that later. The Hindu mythology came much later in his work. What came initially was actually the falling figure of a human figure falling. And he used to tell a story about that, and I can take you across to the falling figure that we have here, which is this one, which is again a early 60s work. Also, I think done in. Basically, he used to tell us stories because they were studying art at the time of partition. So in the mid 40s in India, where he lived in Bombay and he lived very much in the heart of the city, and they saw a lot of violence around partition and things like that. And they were Muhammad Ali Road, and he remembers an incident of seeing a man being thrown and killed and all that violence. So he remembered that always as a really strong turning point in his emotional journey, and he just couldn't come to terms with that level of violence of human beings against each other. So almost all his work actually took off from that. That point in his life where he got exposed to that kind of violence. So the falling figure was a really strong, and the trust bull as well was a very strong image for him, because he found that bull being such a powerful animal and being a symbol that would exude power and animal force and things like that. The way it's kind of controlled, tamed, butchered, he dealt with those kind of. But he always said that he only used those as a starting point, and then the rest of the journey was always about, the emotional, the content of it was one aspect of it, but the journey with the form, the expression through color was very, sort of equally important, if not more important for him at some point. So, and if you've seen his work sort of over the years, it went from being quite very clearly figurative kind of work to becoming almost like a combination of an abstract interpretation of, so the color palette changed, the application of colors changed. So his experiment with the form carried on, and his imagery remained quite small in the sense his response to immediate social events was not to portray them in a illustrative way, which a lot of artists do. Is to say, okay, I'll do a series on a particular event or a particular thing. But he didn't do that. He used his images and he kept reinventing them. So towards the later part of his life, actually his work became very minimalistic, and his last painting was extremely very neutral, muted colors, engagement with the form. I'll show you. This painting was done in 2004. And he had already started using, actually from the falling figure itself, there was a point where he started doing falling birds as well. And then from falling birds, this was sort of a combination of a falling bird. And what was interesting for him was that, birds fly, right? So a falling bird of sort of defying gravity was a very interesting concept for him, which he used combining it with the human form. So he created a lot of movement. So in a two-dimensional space also, he created a lot of drama and a lot of three-dimensional activity, which is always very interesting for the view, I feel. Like that's what attracts me to the work, and the fact that he used very strong colors and he could contain them. Because sometimes it's very difficult to use them without just making everything look very pretty. So his intention was never to sort of beautify anything just for the sake of being pleasing to the senses, kind of a thing, So even though the colors are really pleasing and strong, I think his choice of what colors he was going to use also very often had to do with the emotional content of it. So in this painting, why I like this painting a lot is because this kind of orange is not even, it's not an obvious sky image or, a color that you would use for the sky, but it's just a very interesting color combination for a figure that's falling and is really sort of, the emotional quality is of stress and sort of in a way, but yet for me it's also soothing. This kind of division of his canvas, like these kind of areas, he is always, even here if you see there are two different colors, but there's a subtle difference. So within this also there are many colors that he's used, but in a way it's creating a homogeneous kind of an image. But earlier in the 70s and 80s, he used much more color. It was like a burst of color, and each color sort of gave you a sense of perspective, depth. He created a lot of depth and a lot of levels, layers and things like that. And I always found that very fascinating because he worked almost, I think all his life, he worked in very small spaces and he did huge canvases. We were talking about the mythology and all that, because that kind of just evolved into his work, and then maybe the better known works are the Mahishasur and the Kali and all those images, but that's like a huge discussion about it. But he was very, he was not into it for the religiosity of it, rather he was into it for the fact that, again, Mahishasur, the Mahish is an Asur, and his the role he plays, and the fact that Durga kills him and all that, and also because he's always heard these stories because he had a very close emotional connection with Bengal, and then he lived in Shantiniketan. So I think that story always fascinated him. And he never wanted to, he never talked about him as a completely bad character or a black character.
His first significant painting, Trust Bull, was executed in 1956 when he was 30 years old. The picture reminds me of diagrams showing edible sections of cattle, the haunch, the rump, and so on. The bull has fascinated the artist for over 50 years since that early effort. He continued to explore the image along with select others that form a small repertoire of motifs. There is the rickshaw puller depicted in this charcoal drawing from 1959. The diagonal, represented by these two paintings from 1969 and 1979 respectively. And the falling figure in a transitional painting from 1966 in which Tayyab divided the picture space into a grid, foreshadowing later more successful attempts to combine deeply emotive figuration and geometric precision. This vertiginous composition from 1967 allows the agony of the falling subject full expression. These paintings are all fairly large, 5 to 6 feet high or wide. Occasionally, Tayyab mixes two of these themes, combining bull and rickshaw or falling figure and rickshaw, as in this painting from 1993. Since the mid 1980s, he has frequently painted Kali and the buffalo demon Mahisasura, sometimes engaged in combat with Durga. The trussed bull, earliest of Tayyab's abiding concerns, was inspired by a visit to an abattoir. The artist saw the animals being tied up and then slaughtered, and the vision obsessed him thereafter. The idea of such a strong animal, rendered helpless, became for him symbolic of attacks on the spirit in general. In this painting, it looks like the bull is lying in the lap of the figure as it breathes its last. Violence and trauma are fixtures in Tayyab's art as well as Bacon's. But the impelling force behind a Tayyab painting rarely appears to be destructive. There is usually more sympathy, a sense of victimhood, implied in the Indian artist's figures.
I'm sure, I mean, for any artist, I guess what's happening around you, socially in the environment that you're living in is bound to come into what you create. So, no art, I feel no art can be devoid completely of the socio-economic context of your own reality, which is why I think when people talk about Indian art or European art or whatever, I feel that where is the Indianness, for example? It's in the fact that you're rooted, and so it can come through in any way. I mean, it can come through in the kind of colors you use, or the kind of lighting that you create, or the kind of, that's what was amazing about the Renaissance painters in Europe, the kind of light they created in there, or the subject matter that people use. I mean, these are all things that are there, and I mean, it's not that you'll be less of, say, an Indian painter who will not portraying the sort of villages and landscapes of India, because your subject matter will reflect, in its emotional content it will reflect. As a writer in that time, Manto was definitely much more angry. I would say, I mean, if one reads his stories,
Almost like a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, it's very much like out there and in your face, kind of the descriptiveness of it and all that. That generation of writers did respond to that. I don't know. I mean, this was one instance, like I said, we described of watching the kind of violence or living through the late 40s. But he also, I mean, he did study at JJ School of Art, and he did get exposed to a sort of worldwide art scene. And he did want to go abroad and experience that. So I don't think
There was like a more mature, all-comprehensive sort of perspective.
yeah. In a way, all of them contribute to Indian art in a new way,
Yeah.
because they all had evolved their own style and their own sort of imagery and their own sort of stories.
And when would they sit around and sort of discuss
Oh
things
yeah,
with each
that
other?
was a lovely part about growing up. That we lived. I grew up mostly. My childhood we were in Delhi and in Nizamuddin, in small little house, and every second evening it would be like an open house where all these people would before you knew it, they were talking about what they were reading, or or what they were thinking about their art. So it was a very intense thing. They were very closely connected. There was a willingness to show what they were doing to each other, and then they would get response from each other also. So they really had a very good. I mean, Akbar Badamsi also lived very close by, Ram Kumar, Kushal Khanna, and then there was Gayatri Dev. So they would, and Zain was also part of that whole gang. They would just turn up, and then before you knew it, they were sort of rustling up a sort of meal together, and they would eat together and drink together and all that. So I think they did have that amazing bond of friendship.
So, I mean, this is quite antithetical to the idea that average people on the street have of painters, that they're reclusive and keep to themselves.
They weren't reclusive at all. They were very open. They had great times together. So, as far as film was concerned, he was actually very closely connected with cinema. He grew up with cinema, and he always wrote a film and he wanted to make it, but he couldn't really get out of that. But so in terms, cinema was something he was very close to and identified with, and understood also very deeply. But as far as this whole mixed media I think he just didn't get attracted to that. He carried on with what he knew, in the sense that he was quite happy he was not so judgmental about it. And installation art, I think he was just a bit like, I don't think he was greatly attracted to it. Again, to do that kind of a thing, for him, maybe he didn't feel that what he was trying to say would translate well in those kind of medium. I don't know. There's always an audience for anything that expresses something, because all these emotions or ideas are quite universal, right? It's not like they are fads, or they don't really run out of human existence. It carries on. In fact, it just becomes more fierce and more intense. It's difficult to say how it came about, because I think it just for us it just meant that at least there was a market out there, and there were people who were responding to these works for their validity in the global context, and not just. He was obviously, you do feel happy when something goes, even if you don't get anything out of it financially, you just feel happy when somebody is willing to pay that kind of money for your work. But then at the end of it, I think he and his generation of artists are not really interested in they struggled and suffered far too long to get to that point, So, after working for 50 years where nobody's really interested in buying your work, when it happens, and it's, you kind of laugh about it and say, okay, let's have a drink over it, but that's the end of it. I shared a very close relationship with him. I was an extremely loving person. He was just very, very focused, let's say. He was extremely disciplined and focused. So he worked every single day of the time. Even when he was really unwell and he couldn't see very well towards the end. The discipline of going, sitting in his studio, looking at his work, even if it was with a magnifying glass, just trying to see. So he was a perfectionist in that sense. So it was, now when you look back, you say, okay, I learned a lot from that person. You can't help watching just somebody like that, carrying on with I see a lot of people who are unwell and then just become very exclusive.
And in his time, the choice of professions such as making a painting will be a great act of courage in itself.
Actually, I think one of the few people who carried on making a point to go to younger artists' shows, encouraging them. He would always go if somebody asked him to come. curiosity to see what younger people were doing. So I think he was quite encouraging